Welcome back to Mystery and Murder, Analysis by Dr. Phil, where we dive deep into some of the most infamous criminal minds and headline-making true crime news stories. We're not going to just tell stories. We're going to go inside the minds of these killers and talk about this from the inside out. We're going to talk about the motivations. Why do people do these kind of things? And I get asked that a lot, but when people say, who does this? When they ask me that, it's not rhetorical. They really want an answer, and I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to ask you to walk in their shoes, to put yourself inside the minds of these killers, not asking you to think like that, but to really compare it to who you are. And what I mean is, I want you to look at what these people do and ask yourself, compared to you, how demented they have to be to do the things they do. That's the only way you can understand them. Human behavior is on a continuum, so if you really want to get an idea of who these people are, you've got to compare it to a baseline, the baseline being you, and say, how warped would I have to be, how sick and evil would I have to be to do what these people do? If you don't have anything to compare it to, you really can't relate to what they do. So in a way, I do want you to walk in their shoes, and I want you to walk in the shoes of the victim and think about what they must have experienced. In today's episode, you're not going to have to guess at what that was. There's a fascination with serial killers, how they think, what they do, and we piece together their behaviors through clues that are left at the scene, analysis, profilers do. But rarely do we know what victims go through, what they're thinking in their last moments alive. I mean, think about that. If someone is being tortured and then murdered, what are the last things they say to themselves? What are the last things they think? Well, today I'm going to tell you the story of a woman that I met who, after years of keeping this a dark secret, told me firsthand how she fell for, was kidnapped, tortured, raped, and almost killed by one of America's most notorious serial killers. And she's going to do that in a most compelling way. What he did to her and how it changed her at the time and how it changed her afterwards. And when we talk about how this changed her at the time, the very night that it happened, you're going to be shocked. You will not see it coming. Because this time we do have a play-by-play, exactly what he did, not through investigators, not through clues, but by someone who lived it. When it comes to most serial killer victims, their stories are lost. We're left relying on all the forensic pieces, but not this time. Because today you're going to hear directly from a woman who doesn't need anyone to tell her story because she did survive it. She came face to face with one of the most notorious serial killers of all time. I'm talking about Ted Bundy. And let me tell you, what she endured is the stuff of nightmares. In vivid detail, she gave a play-by-play of her attack, offering a first-hand look into the mind of a true sociopath, a monster that walked among us. This is a story of survival. It's a story of strength. It's a story of a woman who locked eyes with pure evil and learned to tell the tale. And she is going to tell you what it did to her at the moment. That's what experts can't predict. I certainly didn't see it coming. So how did this happen? How did she walk directly into the clutches of arguably one of the most dangerous men walking the streets of America in the 1970s? When we're children, we're subconsciously taught by movies, books, fairy tales how a villain should look. Villains and evil characters are 9 times out of 10 portrayed as physically ugly, unlikable, and mean. Think back to the cartoons. They even had them shaded differently. They had kind of a dark shadow across their face. They had sharp features. We're taught that from a very young age. When you think of someone who may be a threat or even a cold-blooded killer capable of the most depraved acts, you do have a stereotypical picture in your mind. And it isn't someone that's beautiful or handsome, charming, friendly, or particularly likable. So killers who possess those qualities or can even mimic them, like Ted Bundy, are some of the most dangerous creatures to walk the earth. We rely on how things look. I'm a scuba diver, and I remember my scuba instructor told me, I was asking him, what can I touch and what can I not? He said, I'll give you one rule. If it doesn't look like you should touch it, don't. You know, that's a pretty good rule for life. If they look like you shouldn't approach them, don't. They look like you shouldn't hang with them, don't. But that just doesn't always work, because boy, oh boy, can some of these people hide in plain sight. When we're talking about Ted Bundy, we're talking about a really good narcissistic sociopath, psychopath. They can turn on the charm, and they do, until a certain point. And what is that point? What is that trigger? What is that pivot? I'll tell you what it is. It's when they finally get power. When they finally get power over their victim, that's when everything changes. You've heard people say rape is not about sex, it's about power. Nothing could be more true. And when these psychopaths, these sociopaths, these serial killers get that control, get that power, that's when everything changes. Those sparkling eyes get dark. That handsome face takes on a completely different countenance. And here's the question. Which is the mask? Is the charming, good-looking, sparkly face, is that the mask? And it's the darkness under it that comes out? Or is the evil the mask that has taken over and possessed the individual, and there is a real person down beneath it all? We'll talk about that as this story unfolds, but either way, there is a moment that power corrupts, and you've heard the old saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Ted Bundy was dubbed the charming monster, and when he had absolute power, he was dark, he was evil, and he didn't even look the same. He looked and played the part of a respectable man when in reality, he was the embodiment of evil. He wore many hats during his reign of terror. He was a kidnapper, a rapist, a tormentor, a murderer. While the exact number of his victims remains unknown, law enforcement deems him responsible for the violent, brutal deaths, at the very least 36 women. 36 kills. Some say that number may be closer to 100, because while some women who miraculously survived his violence went on to testify at his trial, so many of the other women he killed, of course, remain voiceless to this day, and those that got away hid in shame. We can only imagine how many women are out there who hide because they just don't want to relive the terror, or they don't want to be labeled, she's the one that was raped and tortured by Ted Bundy. They don't want to be that woman in their neighborhood, their church, their work. They don't want to be that woman. Shame empowered him, and he knew it. Rhonda Stapley was one of his survivors. And she, in fact, did keep silent for years. For decades, this woman carried a chilling secret that she had come face to face with notorious killer Ted Bundy and lived to tell the tale. Then, in 2016, she decided to come forward and share her story with me in an exclusive first interview. And on today's episode, we're going to dive into that chilling story of survival, one so intense, it seems like it was ripped from the page of a novel. But it's her true story. And what Rhonda shared with me isn't merely salacious. It lets you inside the mind of a man who remains one of the most dangerous humans to ever walk this earth. Now, Rhonda thankfully escaped. And I mean just barely. This is not only the story of survival, but one of strength, resilience, and courage to finally face her demons of the past. But let me tell you, the battle with herself became almost as difficult as the one she fought with her would-be killer. It's all coming up on Mystery and Murder, analysis by Dr. Phil. Have you checked your home title recently? Many homeowners never have, leaving themselves vulnerable. Scammers can steal your home title, forge your signature, and target your equity. Protect yourself from fraud before it's too late. Secure your title and your financial future today. You won't even know it's happened until it's too late. Ensure you're not a victim. Use promo code PHIL at HometitleLock.com to make sure your title is still in your name. You'll also get a free title history report, plus a free 14-day trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any change, and if fraud should happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Go to HometitleLock.com now. Use promo code PHIL. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code PHIL. Despite some post-election optimism, Wall Street is already bracing for a rough rest of 2025. When Warren Buffett starts dumping blue-chip stocks and stacking up cash, you've got to ask yourself, what does he see coming? I trust Preserve Gold to safeguard my accounts, and I urge you to do the same. They're the only precious metals company I recommend. When uncertainty is this high, smart people look for stability. That's why physical gold and silver might just be what your finances need. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 to get your free precious metals guide from Preserve Gold. With gold prices recently breaking records and analysts predicting this trend to continue through 2025, you cannot afford to wait. As a bonus, you can get up to $15,000 with a qualified purchase from Preserve Gold. So don't wait. Text Dr. Phil, that's DRPHIL, to 50505 today. I want to warn you, what you're about to hear is a graphic and unsettling account of a violent and sexual attack. The story is deeply disturbing and may really be difficult for some listeners to experience. Rhonda's story starts in 1974 when she was a college student in Utah. She was waiting for a bus to take her back to campus. Sometimes just one tiny thing can alter the course of your entire life. In this case, Rhonda's bus being delayed kicked off a series of terrifying events that will haunt her for the rest of her life. A life that would literally hang on a shoestring. Little did she know that one day, sharing her story with me, with the hope of helping others, would facilitate a healing she deeply needed and undeniably deserved. As she waited for the bus, she saw a tan Volkswagen drive by really slowly.
The bus was late. I was getting frustrated. And then this tan Volkswagen drove by very slowly. Cute driver kind of looked at me as he went past, and then he stopped and backed up and leaned over and rolled down the passenger window and asked me where I was going. I told him I was going up to the U, and he said, "Me too, hop in." So I opened the door and got in.
Of course, we all now know that this was Ted Bundy, inviting her into his vehicle And we all want to yell, run, scream, do not get in that car. But let's look at this interaction from both the perspective of the monster and his intended victim at the time. Bundy was a predator, and a methodical one at that. And let's face it, he was well practiced. He was possessed by a repeated urge to rape and murder, to add women to his collection of conquest. Profilers later noted his penchant for women with straight, sleek brown hair parted in the middle. So he takes a drive looking for possible prey, all from the comfort of his car. He drives leisurely, scanning the street until his eyes land on a young woman waiting alone. It's Rhonda. She's glancing from side to side, looking for that bus. This could be an easy opportunity for him. If he times it just right, he can swoop in, play the role of the White Knight, helping out a damsel in distress, and she'll willingly get in his car. He's right. In this instance, his ruse succeeds. Switching to Rhonda's perspective, notice she told me that her first impression of this stranger who pulled up next to her was that he was cute. That's the first thing she said, how he was cute. And that was very disarming. That's all it took for a young, intelligent college woman to drop her guard and climb into the car of a sadistic monster. We know that Ted Bundy's all-American good looks were one of his biggest assets in getting women to initially trust him. And there's a scientific reason for this. Multiple studies show that people tend to perceive conventionally attractive people as more trustworthy and cooperative than those who are less attractive. Now note that we use the word perceive as it's an ingrained bias, certainly not a foolproof one. And here's what we're talking about. We all know about prejudice and bias, and we think about that only in the negative. If you're prejudiced against someone or you have a bias, we think that that's always against the thing you're perceiving. I'm prejudiced against that group of people, or I'm prejudiced against those ideas, or I have a bias against that part of the country or that ideology or that group of people. But we also have positive biases that cause us to accept things at face value, to not think critically about those things. And that positive bias can be as crippling as any negative bias, any negative stereotype. For example, if you have a friend that's trying to get you to do something you shouldn't do, get you to cheat on something, get you to do a business deal that's kind of flaky, the fact that they're your friend will cause you to be less skeptical of a shady sort of proposal than if it was from a stranger. You have a positive bias about your friend, so you think less critically about what they're telling you. That positive bias makes you more vulnerable. So it can be just as dangerous to be less evaluative because of a positive bias, so you get into trouble that way. Just as you had negative bias, so you passed up people or ideas because you were negative about them from the beginning. In this case, the positive bias is, hey, if somebody's clean-cut and good-looking, hey, what could go wrong? A lot could go wrong. And that's exactly what happened in this case. Be careful in your life about positive biases causing you to not think critically about things that are presented to you. All Rhonda sees at the time is a cute young man who seems to be around her age, claims to be her college peer, offering her a much-needed lift. What could go wrong? It's easy to see how Rhonda, in just those few critical seconds, thought it would be safe to enter Bundy's car. Beats standing on the street. She was about to find out how crippling a positive bias could be. Initially, the car ride seemed to be going fine, and Rhonda's new acquaintance, Ted, well, he seemed normal. He was pleasant, he was talkative. Before long, she realized that Bundy wasn't following the correct route back to campus. Still, playing the part of gentleman, Bundy asked her permission to go an alternative way so he could run an errand near the local zoo. Now, there is a definite mental manipulation going on here. As I said, he's very practiced. Not his first abduction. And he's learned if you can get your target to own the plan, you don't just say, I'm going to take a side trip here. If you can get their permission, where they're giving you their blessing, they own it. Hey, he's going off track here, but I gave him permission to do so. I'm not being railroaded. I told him it was okay. I own this departure. Then you're golden. Figuring that she would still be home faster than if she had waited for the bus, Rhonda says, okay, no problem. You need to make a quick sidetrack. That's all right. However, she became nervous for the first time when she noticed Bundy continued to take them further and further out of the way, eventually driving towards a canyon. Let's discuss preparedness, because we know emergencies happen when we least expect them, but instead of just taking it, we can prepare. Let's discuss Jace Case, one of your most important preparation tools. With Jace Case, you'll have emergency prescription medications on hand right when you need them. Think about it. Ever been caught off guard? Whether it's a sudden illness or a travel hiccup, the right medications can make all the difference. Jace Case is designed to take that worry off your plate, so when a minor health issue pops up, it doesn't turn into a major problem. Don't let unforeseen circumstances derail your plans or your peace of mind. Live with confidence. Take charge with Jace today. Visit jace.com and use code PHIL for a discount on your order and get emergency antibiotics on hand for the moment you need them. That's JASE.com, code PHIL, PHIL. Now she's got a different internal dialogue. She's saying, I'm in the car with a stranger and he's taking me out in the woods. Now she's saying different things to herself.
The conversation started to go weird then because he stopped talking to me, and I'm still trying to make idle conversation, and I'm thinking that he's probably looking for a place to pull off in the park and wants to make out, and I don't know him and I'm not really a make-out person, but he's still a cute law student and I don't want to offend him and I don't want to embarrass myself. So I'm thinking of, how do I get out of this situation?
Notice she says she's not a make-out person, but she didn't want to offend him. This is a common thing that perpetrators prey on when it comes to women. Their inherent desire not to offend, not to be confrontive. There's a book called The Gift of Fear, written by an American security specialist who worked for governments, large corporations, and public figures that I know, named Gavin DeBecker. I've known Gavin for many years. He talks about how women almost always ignore the gift of fear, aka their gut instinct, because they fear being offensive or coming off as rude. He also describes other pre-incident indicators to watch for, and Bundy had them all. Forced teaming. This is when a person implies that they have something in common with their chosen victim, acting as if they have a shared predicament, when that really isn't true. There's no shared predicament, but they get this we going. Speaking in we terms is a mark of this. We don't need to talk outside. Let's go in. Charm and niceness. This is being polite and friendly to a chosen victim in order to manipulate them by disarming their mistrust. Some people call it love bombing. just really be super nice, really be charming. Another is too many details. If a person is lying, they will add excessive details to make themselves sound more credible to their chosen victim. They're answering questions that aren't asked. They're talking about things in detail, but they're not relevant. It's just deflection. It's noise. They're getting you listening to things that don't matter, so you can't be critically thinking. Typecasting. An insult is used to get a chosen victim who would otherwise ignore one to engage in conversation to counteract the insult. For example, "Oh, I bet you're too stuck up to talk to a guy like me." The tendency is for the chosen victim to want to prove the insult untrue. "Oh, no, not at all. Go ahead." Another is loan sharking, giving unsolicited help to the chosen victim and anticipating they'll feel obligated to extend some reciprocal openness in return. So they try to create a tit-for-tat relationship. The victim doesn't ask for it, but you do something for them and they feel like they owe you, so they come back to you nice and are candid with you, and now you've taken it to another level. The unsolicited promise, a promise to do or not do something when no such promise is asked for. This usually means that such a promise will be broken. Like, "I'm not going to do anything to you." Well, who brought that up? Why do they feel the need to say that? I didn't know that was a question. When they bring that up, they might as well say, "I'm going to do something to you." Why do you feel the need to tell me you're not if that's not on your mind? If an unsolicited "I promise I'll leave you alone after this" usually means the chosen victim will not be left alone. An unsolicited "I promise I won't hurt you" usually means they do intend to hurt you. Why would you feel the need to say that? Discounting the word no, refusing to accept rejection. They've got an agenda and they're running it. Now, I'm going to put that list on the website for you so you can go back and look over it again, but these are all tactics meant to engage you as a potential victim in a disarming way. Well, let's get back to the specific story of Rhonda. Bundy has gotten her in the car, scanning for a perfect spot to move into phase 2 of his twisted plan. And believe me, there is a plan. And Rhonda, she still has no idea what's about to happen. Now, why is that? Let me tell you why that is. All behavior is on a continuum, and it goes from the innocence of an angel to the blackness, the darkness of evil. And the reason most people can't foresee the evil conduct of a monster is because their mind just can't go there. They just can't go there. When they consider possibilities, you have to be really demented to consider that dark, vicious, cruel behavior. That's why I said I want you to walk in the shoes of both perpetrator and prey, because you have to travel this continuum so you have in your mind what people are capable of. Your children have to be able to travel down that continuum, not to dwell in that dark space, but to know what people are capable of. If you don't, if your children don't, how can they ever guard against it? I have 2 boys, and whenever they got old enough to go out on their own, being trained in psychology and human behavior, I would set them down and say, listen, you need to know you will be out among predators tonight. You need to be aware that there are people in this world who are capable of doing very dark things. There are people who leave their home and they don't consider it a good night if they don't inflict pain on someone. You need to be very careful and be aware that some people are capable of sadistic cruelty. And if you get in a situation where your spidey senses are telling you, this is not good, it is not cowardly to turn around and walk away. If they are a sick human being, they have nothing to lose, you have everything to lose. Walk away. So you don't see it coming because you just don't have that in your repertoire of behavior. You can't even imagine luring someone into the woods, beating, torturing, raping, and murdering them. So how can you foresee it? It's not even on your list of potential behaviors. She's been brought up to be courteous and polite. She doesn't want to be rude. She doesn't want to offend him by asking too many questions, because she doesn't even consider that he could be thinking about murdering her. In her mind, he's just a nice, cute guy, and she's trying to keep the conversation going, and he's counting on that. However, even if her gut had whispered at that point that something wasn't right, trust me, it was too late. She didn't even know it yet, but she couldn't exit that vehicle if she had tried. Not without Bundy opening the door, because he had designed it that way. That was a trap with no exit. And he had no intention of opening the door and letting Rhonda go, because now he's literally and figuratively in the driver's seat. You remember I said, when do they go dark? When they have the power. And the second she sat down in that seat, she might as well have been in row 17 on a runaway bus. He is in complete control.
And then he pulled into a parking place and parked the car and turned it off.
So at this point, you think, I'm going to have to fend off a romantic advance.
Yes. And then he turned in the car seat, so he's kind of facing me, and he leaned in really close. I thought he was going to kiss me. Instead, he said very quietly, "Do you know what? I'm going to kill you."
Imagine hearing those words. I'm going to kill you. That's when Rhonda said she saw his face change right before her eyes. Rhonda fought back as Bundy strangled her, a tussle ensuing inside the car. But she was running out of air quickly. She told me that at that moment she thought, this is how I'm going to die. Before long, Bundy had dragged her outside his bug. She was in and out, consciousness slipping away, and came to on a nearby picnic table. He began beating her, punching her in the stomach as she cried, pleading through ragged breaths for him to stop. She feared he had broken ribs.
There was a picnic table in this area. The Volkswagen was parked in that area over there. Then he turned off the lights. We were sitting in the car at the time. He strangled me unconscious.
Were you screaming and crying?
Yes, and begging for my life. I was telling him, don't hit me anymore, you know.
Repeatedly, Bundy would cover her nose and mouth, then release her to let her breathe, only to repeat the torturous cycle again and again. Rhonda felt like this was a game for him, a game that consisted of him watching her nearly die, then come back to life at his will. Power. Sickeningly, at one point, he even asked her how she would prefer to be killed, and then went back and forth between strangling her and covering her nose and mouth. This is a rush for him. This is him getting off on the power. He has complete control now. He has her life in his hands. He has no accountability. There's no one to stop him. He can do anything he wants. He can take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. He can do anything he wants. It's like a cat toying with a mouse. And it's the power that stimulates him. He wasn't going to just kill her and end the torture.
The last time I was coming from unconsciousness to consciousness lying on the picnic table, he was slapping my face again, trying to wake me up again. And he said, good girl, you don't want to die yet. Don't die on me yet, because you would miss the best part. And he grabbed me by my boot to the end of the picnic table, pulled my pants down and raped me.
Just beyond horrific what he did to her. We now know from analysis from experts like FBI agent Bill Hagmeyer, who interviewed Bundy extensively, that this man was a psychopath. Hearing Rhonda's story gives further credence to this description. When we assess a creep like Bundy, it's clear that control wasn't just part of the crime, it was the main impetus. In order to satiate his twisted sexual desires, Bundy sought to isolate his victims, instill fear, take his time, and exert total power and dominance. In his twisted mind, he wasn't an attacker, he was the king who reigned supreme during these 6-stage scenarios. No woman could reject him, no woman could say no to what he wanted, because he was the one calling all the shots. It struck Rhonda how angry he seemed at her when just a short time ago she'd been a perfect stranger. She had done nothing to him. She said Bundy's fists were clenched, his veins were bulging on his forehead and his neck. His face was bright red. He says, you don't have the right to cry and whine at me. You should be thanking me that you are even still alive. I can kill you anytime I want. You should be thankful that you're even still breathing air. He is actually wanting her to be grateful to him. This is a man who by all accounts seemed to resent and despise all women, any woman he happened to abduct and force to endure his ire. Rhonda's chilling memory of how he called her a good girl prior to raping her also fits perfectly with that depraved psyche of his. It wasn't enough for him to violate her physically. He had to condescendingly tell her that he was the one in charge and make it clear that she existed solely to please him and obey his orders. And here's the disturbing contrast. While Rhonda was terrorized, brutalized, fighting for her life, she said Bundy seemed to really be enjoying himself. In that secluded canyon, he was living out his darkest fantasies, no remorse, no second thoughts, deaf to her frantic pleas. She described his eyes as appearing black, lifeless, devoid of emotion. He was indifferent to her suffering. Zero empathy. Bringing her in and out of consciousness, alternating between strangling her, then jolting her awake. This was his way of playing God. This was about the sadistic thrill Bundy got out of holding someone's life in his hands. All signs seemed to point to Rhonda dying on that picnic table in that secluded Utah canyon, and yet things were about to take a turn. After this terrible attack, he was counting on Rhonda already being dead or too weak to run or fight back. But Bundy was about to find out that leaving Rhonda unattended, even for one moment, was a huge mistake. On the next Mystery and Murder, analysis by Dr. Phil, Rhonda's escape and why she kept this dark secret buried for decades, plus a look inside what caused Ted Bundy to become the infamous murderer he's known as today. And I'm going to start revealing how this changed her on even that first night. The change came after she escaped. It's all coming up next week.